All right, we finally got the two wives that were loafing out the auditorium. So good to see everybody tonight. So just a reminder of a few things coming up. A week from tonight, we will all be in the auditorium for two mission presentations. Jeff's going to tell us about his recent trip to Honduras. He went on a medical mission, and then of course the Nicaraguan group went to Nicaragua, and they're going to do that. And then we're going to have a reception afterwards. Leslie Hearn, I think, is taking care of refreshments. May have put a post on Facebook. Anybody see that today? So anyway, if some of you ladies or men would like to bring some refreshments a week from tonight, I think there'll be a sign-up sheet perhaps on Facebook sometime. So let's see. The other thing is Sunday is our fifth Sunday. So remember, that is our special contribution day. All of the contribution will go to the building fund on Sunday. And then Sunday night, I will be actually at Petty John. I'm speaking at a teacher's banquet. And Brett Moore, is Brett in here? I didn't see him come in. Brett will be teaching for us in here Sunday night. He will be doing one of our Sunday night topics. I think it's the main thing, let the main thing be the main thing. I think it's the title of his. And so he'll do a good job on that. I think that's all I can think of. Anything else in the next week or so? Probably is our missing pieces deal for our young people is Saturday, and been working on that the last 2 or 3 days. Kind of excited about that. That ought to be a neat time for our kids. And we actually have talked about, we may try to do one of those for our adults as well, and be a little different. Probably the topics may be a little different, but it'll be good to jump in there and do some of that type of study. All right, so Wednesday night class, we're looking at our one another passages, and want to take a look at really kind of one of my favorites, and one that I have found to kind of be the most challenging for me, I suppose, over the years, and that is to bear one another's burdens. So if you have your Bibles, go ahead and turn over to Galatians 6 and verse 2. We're going to spend quite a bit of time on this one verse, and then digging around like we've done before in the immediate context around it to try to gain a little bit of understanding. But this is a very powerful verse. It's very short, very simple, but it has a very powerful message that is embedded in this thing. And so I want us to spend some time talking about it tonight. So here's chapter 6, verse 2. Bear one another's burdens, and thereby fulfill the law of Christ. So that's a verse I don't know how many times I've read that verse over the years, used it in sermons, Bible classes, in conversations I've had with people. And so as we think about this verse, there's really two pieces of it I want for us to look at. I want for us to look at the first part, bear one another's burdens. And I want for us to let's take that apart a little bit. And then the second part of the class will be fulfilling the law of Christ, and see if we can put some meaning on that. What does that mean? Okay? So that's kind of the plan for tonight. All right, so first of all, let's talk about these burdens. What are some burdens that we can bear for one another? And maybe that should say, what are some burdens that we should share and bear with one another? So let's talk about burdens that we bear for just a little bit.
Physical burdens.
Okay, so there's physical burdens. As an example, what?
Mowing the lawn for an old person.
Okay, so there's just physical things that we might take care of. Be careful with your speech, by the way. Because my yard may need mowing too. So physical things that need to happen. So especially this time of year, the weeds are growing. There may be some that can't get out and do it. And honestly, that kind of becomes a burden. The city may be, breathing down your neck. You don't want to make the neighbors upset. So it can definitely be a burden to have some kind of physical thing going on in the yard around the house and whatnot. What are some other, let's talk about the physical stuff. What are some other physical burdens that we might need to help each other with?
Grief.
So, grief, now that's sort of physical and spiritual at the same time. Definitely we need to be sensitive to grief. Reach out to folks, have conversation with folks about grief. What else?
Spiritual.
Okay. There's spiritual condition we need to be very sensitive to and help bear some burdens along our brothers and sisters' spiritual journeys. Yes, Miss Beth.
When Greg was sick, I don't know how many knew it, but Sid Lewis and others would stay with him Sunday night so I could come to church.
And what a great service and ministry that was, wasn't it? So, yeah. So one of the other physical ones that came to mind is bearing burdens from a financial point of view. And our congregation, I think we all kind of know that a lot of that goes on, but there continues to be a fairly significant need financially for some of our members, younger and old alike, and we, that's part of, we need to be helping bear that burden. And one of the things that I'm gonna, y'all know me, I'm gonna confess some things about some of my attitudes sometimes. Sometimes people get in a financial burden and it's their own dadgum fault, And so, what happens in my mind is, so Wade went out and blew all this money on a new shotgun and a new bow and all this stuff, and now he can't buy any food for his wife. And, well, I guess they're just gonna have to suffer. I'm sorry, but Layne, that is a horrible attitude to have. So I know that, I have that attitude from time to time. And you know what, if sweet little Emily needs a meal, I need to be there, whether Wade blew her money or not. So we need to make sure that we're not making excuses for bearing other burdens, because of some situation on earth, even if it was their own fault. There's no conditions on here. Oh, oops, what in the world was that?
No judgment.
Yeah, so we need to bear one another's burdens. And that's what this passage says.
One of the reasons I love Acts chapter 2 so much is because I feel like they understood that.
Oh, yeah.
A whole lot better than maybe we do. If you read that passage, it was unequivocally what is mine is yours.
That's right.
And everybody had what they needed.
Yeah.
And it was all provided by those who had maybe more than others.
Yeah, exactly right.
And that's what we should be shooting for.
That's right. A couple other, yes ma'am.
I knew a man one time that his thoughts on that were, I'd rather help 100 people that didn't need it than this one person that did.
That's right. And I've been told that before, and I think that's a beautiful philosophy. Rather help 100 who didn't need it than one that did.
And miss the one who did.
And miss the one that did. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
I think of helping mothers with young children,
Yeah.
and encouraging them. Keep on coming, bring the kids, okay, they cry a little bit, it's all right, they'll
That's
get
right.
through it,
That's
It's
right.
training done.
And boy, we've got a big need here. But we got a lot of children, and we've got more on the way. So this burden is not going to go away. And
Don't ever want it to go away.
And we don't ever want it to go away. And let me just make a little plug here, because we've been asked this. I've had this conversation many times, and I want to say this without any judgments on any place else. So I want to share with you, if you don't know, I want to share with you what we, and I think I can speak for the eldership here, what we as elders believe about worship. We want our children from birth to death. We want everybody in worship together. And not that it's a sin. My grandkids go to whatever children's church or whatever that is up in Bentonville. They're a large congregation. They have 2 services, both of them about the size of us. But they send all their kids in there, and they're in a classroom and doing kind of a little VBS thing with them. They do that every Sunday, and again, that's fine. But for us as elders here, we want our kids here. We want our kids in worship with us. We want to learn to be disciplined. If I have a baby sitting behind me who all of a sudden just bursts out screaming, which happens every week, that we are disciplined enough that we are able to be distracted a little bit, get focused back. I honestly, I don't even hear it while I'm preaching. I don't think Logan does either. It is just, in our opinion, so important. So it's, again, no judgments anywhere. It's what we feel like is best for our context and our congregation. So that's just FYI for you guys. All right, any other thoughts about burdens here? Yeah, I'll be right back to you, Rob. No, go ahead.
My dad lived with me for about the last 15 to 20 years of his life, and I would leave for work. My mom passed away about 15 to 20 years before he did.
Yeah.
And he moved in with me, and I would leave for work on a Monday morning, maybe drive 5 hours and have to stay in hotels and then come back on Friday. And I remember he used to say especially the last 5 or 6 years of his life, he would call me and he would say, and he'd get kind of frustrated about something. He was kind of like an Archie Bunker. But he would say, Russell, you don't know how it is being here 5 days and not talking to anybody.
Yeah.
So the elderly, and women probably don't have as much problem with that as older men, but I think that's something
Yeah.
that's really.
Yeah, we need to be sensitive and aware of those.
Just talking to them.
That's right. And I got a text from Pat Robinson today. John is back and doing better. He's still got a long ways to go. But she did say he would like some visits. But when did she say it would be good? Billy got
Probably closer to the weekend. They're trying to get some things settled and in place.
Yeah.
One thing just to make sure of though is to make sure that you're healthy if you're gonna go see.
That's right.
Make sure.
And secondly, make sure that you text her or call her before
Yes.
you go. But she specifically mentioned John would really like some company, and John's a talker anyway, so he likes people, likes visits. But so maybe next week we get some. I think we're getting some meals lined up for them, and so we'll have some kind of some visits lined up there for them anyway. And now I have a question that I think is later on in this PowerPoint, but this seems like an appropriate place to ask it. If we're gonna bear burdens like we just talked about, what has got to be in place for us to fulfill this? What has to be there?
Love,
There gotta be a relationship, and what else?
humility.
Humility. Communication, go with that just a little bit further. What kind of communication?
Well, if there's a need that you have, then you need to make it known. And if someone is aware of the need that someone has,
Right.
then they can communicate with others to let others know. And if someone offers to help bear a burden, you're not being less of a man or a woman if you accept.
Yeah.
You're giving someone an opportunity to show Christ's love.
So, well, he just covered a whole bunch of stuff.
You just summed it up.
Yeah. So,
Unconditional love.
yeah, again, so important. Somebody else?
Unconditional love.
Yeah. Yeah, and it needs to be unconditional to where it's not just, well, I'm gonna help Mike, but the rest of you guys, good luck. But this idea of communication, I think, is huge. That not only should we communicate needs, and that takes, somebody mentioned humility. That takes a great deal of humility for me to say, you know what, maybe I need to call somebody. Maybe I need to call Todd Giesler and say, Todd, I'm sorry, I am struggling financially. Do you know somebody I could go to? Is there something? We need to be able to have that kind of relationship that we can have those kind of conversations. And the other thing that Mike said is absolutely right. We need to be kind of sensitive. We need to know each other well enough that we can kind of recognize the needs that are there. Charles mentioned we need to be carrying burdens spiritually. Are we noticing when somebody is missing worship, for example? Logan and I, every Monday morning, we have the same conversation. Who was missing yesterday? Do we know why they're missing? Do we need to check on folks? And we'll have, most of the time it's a fairly short list, but we check on folks, kind of starting on Monday if they missed worship. We just want to know. A lot of times people miss and we know where they are, and that's fine. But we need to be sensitive. We need to be, plugged in with one another. And if everybody will just kind of take care of their little group, we'll get everybody covered in the auditorium. It's not like, everybody needs to know where 400 people are. Just the 20 or 30 that sit around you. Because we're all a bunch of, we're all a bunch of cows. We sit in the same spot. We sit under the same tree every day. So we just kind of look for our group. And again, let me encourage us to do that, because this passage is useless without that peace. Well, it's just good theology. So, yes, ma'am.
In my church at North MacArthur, they have Brothers Keepers groups.
Yeah.
And it's like row by row. I forgot how many they have, but they're a congregation of 1,000, but
Right.
that was kind of neat.
Yeah.
You go put everybody in that little section of pews.
Yeah. And, we've tried some different things over the years, and the logistics of trying to keep track of everybody is just difficult. And I think the church is designed for everybody to look out for everybody, look out for the folks around you, reach out to them, and we basically shepherd the whole flock, one another. We can take care of all that. So,
Layne,
yes,
I've had to learn to ask
yes,
for help. And one of my daughters told me, Mom, you're not allowing people to do what they need to do if you don't ask for help.
yeah.
That's been really hard.
It is, asking for help is extremely difficult.
But it makes it possible
That's right.
for others to bear my burden if I will ask.
That's right. And, too, if we're checking on folks and we ask them, we need to be able to say, yes, here is what I need. And then obviously, if it's something I can't take care of, I'll find somebody that can take care of it. But again, that's a huge piece. For me, I always, if somebody offers me a piece of chocolate cake, whether I want it or not, I always take it. So, really that principle though is important, that if somebody offers something to me, I will always try to take it and either use it or eat it or let my wife eat it or use it or whatever. But I think that's an important piece there to that, so.
Layne, I know as an eldership, we talk a lot about, we absolutely want to know what's going on.
That's right.
We want to know, and if we can't help, we're going to find somebody that can help. We talk about that a lot. We absolutely need to know if someone's struggling in any way. We want to know about that.
Yeah, that's right. And we're hoping as elders, and we've mentioned to everybody, we're going to start making some phone calls. Oh, y'all are in trouble. We're going to call everybody in our directory, and I think we put the 3 questions. I don't know if they're in the bulletin or not.
Yeah.
And we want to do that. We want to try to open up a dialogue that will continue forward, and we hope to learn some things about this body here that we can be more in tune with, and but confiding in an elder and telling them some things is not gossip. Now, it could be gossip, I suppose, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we're communicating needs. So there's a line there, obviously, but So this idea of burden bearing is huge, and there's a lot of moving pieces with it that I think are important.
You know, there is a lot of things to this, and you know, I think to a large degree there are a lot of us that struggle with sharing the burdens. To let someone else share that with us,
Right.
or for us. It is easier, right? It may not be easier. Seems to be easier if there is a relationship there. But if we love like Jesus, there does not have to be.
That's right. That's right.
And we can bear those burdens with folks without that real close relationship that we really need.
That's right.
But we can.
That's right.
And we should.
That's right. We can and we should. Exactly right. Any other comments? So now if we take this idea and we look at the immediate context around this statement, I want first to notice a couple things that was on Paul's mind as he wrote this. So take a look at chapter 6 and verse 1. We'll just move back up a verse. And actually, the context probably goes up into chapter 5, probably starting at about verse 25. So let's move up a little bit. If we live by the Spirit, let us also walk by the Spirit. Let us not become boastful, challenging one another, envying one another. Brethren, if anyone is caught in a trespass, you who are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness, each one looking to yourself, so that you too will not be tempted. So do you see the burden for the church that is on the mind of Paul? So what is that burden that is on Paul's mind? The sin that we deal with as humans. And, you know, one of the things, y'all are familiar with our RTC, Recovery Through Christ, kind of program thing we had running for, we ran it for a couple years. We've had to discontinue that because the guy that wrote it wouldn't give us permission to do some things we wanted to do. So RTC is no more because the guy basically pulled the plug on it, which is very unfortunate. But there are going to be some things starting up in its place. And, you know, what I saw and what I want to do with RTC was turn it into this kind of thing where we could get together and talk about not necessarily addictions, but talk about sin stuff that we're struggling with. And again, that is so important that we are able to bear that burden. And you know, I know some things coming down the pike that are going to be related with that. And again, that's important, and that's exactly what Paul. That's context here. That when we're dealing with sin, in this, in verse 26, he says, "Let us not become boastful and challenging one another." So there's relationship issues going on there, and Paul says, "Bear those burdens." You know, don't let these relationship issues, this challenging one another, don't let it continue. Get in there, let's bear whatever's going on here, let's bear them. If we look after verse 2, if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. So what is that person struggling with?
Arrogance.
Pride.
Arrogance, pride. Do we see that? Do we see that in people around us? Yeah. Boy, I see it. I see it all the time, and it's a very real, very big problem. Now, look at verse 4. Let's see. I think I've got this right down here somewhere. Okay, go down to. Do I come back to verse 4? Oh, I do. All right, now go back up into chapter 5. So there's some other things in the larger context as well. So the immediate context is dealing with sin, dealing with pride and arrogance. We go back to chapter 5, verse 1. It was for freedom that Christ set us free. Therefore, keep standing firm and do not be subject again to a yoke of slavery. So here's this idea of bearing one another's burdens, because that, now we could consider that might be an addiction. but it also might be, I think the church in the Galatian region they were trying to go back to the old law. That was their master, their slave master, was the old law, and they wanted to follow it. We have our own past that we sometimes become slave to again. I believe Paul is saying, bear that burden. Bear that burden with brothers and sisters. Know what's going on. Be able to bear that. Down in verse 13. For you were called to freedom. Only do not turn your freedom into an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. So there's serving one another. This is what Wade kind of started with. Serving one another is bearing one another's burdens, because we're helping develop all that. Verse 16, I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not carry out the desires of the flesh. So there we are again, bearing one another's burdens in dealing with the problems that we have with our flesh, whatever those might be. Now, go back to chapter 6, and I want for you to look at verse 4 and 5. There's one other little piece here before we move to part 2 that I think is huge. Verse 4. But each one must examine his own work, and then he will have reason for boasting in regard to himself alone, and not in regard to someone else. For each one will bear his own load. Now, this almost looks like a contradiction. Verse 2, he says, bear one another's burdens. But then in verse 5, he says, hey, bear your own burdens. Well, here's what's interesting about that. There's two different Greek words used, translated exactly the same. One of them is this implication of a massive weight that has been put on your shoulders, and it is crushing you to the ground. That's the first one. Bear one another. You know what the second one is? Bear your own stuff. It's used in the military. Carry your own pack. That's literally what that word means. Matter of fact, there's a translation of the Bible that says that. Carry your own pack. What is Paul saying here? Yes, bear one another's burdens, but do what? Do your part. Don't become a burden to someone else when you can take care of yourself. So it's an interesting paradigm that he sets up here with, hey, we need to be bearing one another's burdens, and we need to be doing our part. So we get this, again, this full picture of what it means for us as the children of God. That, you know, hey, I need to bear whoever's burden is out there, and if I can get out and mow my own yard, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to wait for Randall to show up, and mow my yard, although I can do it, because I'm too lazy and I'm going to sit in front of the TV and let somebody else do my stuff for me. Boy, carry your own pack. So we carry our own pack, work and bear one another's burdens again, whatever. And we bear one another's burdens with no judgment. Even if Randall is the one inside watching his TV and he asked me to mow his yard, I'm going to go mow his yard. Even if he's just in there taking a nap watching TV. Again, there's no conditions. All right, any comments here?
Don't forget I'm next door.
Oh, that's true. Well, you'll be the one out mowing, probably. Yeah, all right, other comments. Everybody kind of see how those two pieces fit here.
Well, I see too, Layne, that if if I ask another to help me in my need, and I'm leaning on them, then I'm also, to me, the second part of that is, then I'm trying to, what can I do to get back to where I'm holding it alone? Yeah. Because that's the ultimate thing, is helping to help the other, and then they're helping themselves, and then they get to pass that on.
Remember what Paul, I don't remember now exactly, some of you guys will remember where this is at. Paul will say, I think it's to the church in Thessalonica, I want you guys to work. And why does he tell them that they need to work? So that they will have something to share with those in need. That's bear one another's burdens is what that is. So, and it's also carrying my own pack. We get out and work, but we're working so that we can help bear one another's burdens. Again, a neat a very powerful piece. So, yeah, thanks for that, Amy.
I think verse 2 is the overload, and verse 4 is your own load.
That's right. The overload and your own load. Good way to say that. That's right. All right, so what is the motivation? So why do this? And what is it that should be motivating us to be reaching out to one another to bear these burdens?
It's our family, we love them. So
a big piece of this has got to be our love for the family. That we love the church, that we love the brotherhood of believers. I think that is a huge piece. Look back up in Galatians chapter 5 and verse 24. What motivation does Paul specifically mention in verse 24? Now, those who belong to Christ have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. So what's the motivation embedded here? It has to do with love, but whose love? Christ's love. And what happened? He died for us.
You bared all of our burdens.
1 Peter chapter 2, verse 21 to 25, he set us an example. And he talks about his suffering. What burden did Jesus bear for us? The whole kit and caboodle. I mean, everything. And we think about the burden that Jesus has borne for us. He has borne a burden. Matter of fact, Paul's going to develop this in the book of Galatians, but he is bearing a burden that would absolutely kill us, destroy us, send us to hell. That's the burden that he bore for us. And here's what's worse. Didn't we do some things deliberately on purpose? Anyone? And he still forgave us of those? That's part of the human condition, unfortunately. We do things, we may know they're wrong, but because of the desires of the flesh, we do them anyway. He will forgive that. He will bear that burden anyway. Now, obviously, there's a limit there, so I'm not trying to talk about free grace or cheap grace or any of that stuff. But what I am saying is that's part of the human condition. And he bore that for us on the cross. We put that in perspective, that should be a motivating factor for us. That because of the huge burden that he bore for me, surely I can bear a simple burden for you. Not even in comparison, are they, those two?
And what's interesting is he didn't do it because we were good.
That's
While
exactly
we were
right.
yet sinners,
That's right.
he died for us. And so
That's right.
we've got to build that in. If we're going to fulfill the law of Christ,
That's right.
you know, we've got to make sure that we have that same. We don't just bear the burdens of people that are good to us.
Yeah.
You go back to your context you're talking about in the first of chapter 5, was kind of referencing the old law.
Yeah.
Think about that judgmental spirit that came along with that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think there were a lot more judging of others than there was helping pick your brother up and maybe create some accountability and some, help. You're almost seeing a cry for accountability here, like, hey, don't condemn your brother.
That's right.
Pick him up and help him, it talks a lot about the flesh versus the spirit, like help him with those fleshly problems.
That's right. So there again is that piece we have got to know one another and be open with one another, share life with one another, so that we can accomplish this verse. Again, this verse means nothing if we can't get that figured out. And again, I'm kind of preaching to the choir because I feel like, and I've mentioned this since we started, this congregation does a great job on this, but there's always room for improvement. So what are some ways that we can bear one another's burdens? I think we've kind of talked about that already in our discussion. Helping each other in a lot of different ways. There are 4 examples that I want for us to look at real quick of different one another passages that I think tie into this bearing one another. James 5:16 says, confess to one another. Now, how is that a bearing one another's burden issue?
Share it, see one's life years.
Exactly. That's huge. That is huge. Because if we just keep our sin inside of us without ever talking to somebody about it, it will absolutely eat us alive. And so he says, confess to one another. That is bearing one another's burdens. And I tell you, sometimes those conversations, those are hard conversations, aren't they? They're hard to have the courage to have if I'm the one confessing. It's hard for me to work up the courage to say, hey, Mike, can we go have a cup of coffee? I need to talk to you about something. But it's hard on Mike as Mike listens to my heart be poured out. And boy, you talk about building a bond like nothing else. The folks that I have sat and had these conversations with, I feel closer to than I ever would have before. Because all of a sudden we are sharing something, we're sharing something private, but crucial. Anyway, huge.
And a real powerful thing of that is, if we don't, Satan can use that against us to drive wedges in between us.
That's right.
And so we're taking that away from him, that weapon away from him. That's very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. We've already kind of talked about this. What does it take to fulfill that passage in this context? Knowing one another, it takes a great deal of love, interaction, relationship, humility, all of those things that we've talked about. It takes all that to be a piece of that. The second one I jotted down about bearing one another's burdens is being able to comfort one another. So this one was brought up by Ms. Pat about, if someone is sick, struggling with, terminal illness, at home with an aging parent. Think about John Robinson at home. He's not going to be able to get out. Pat might like some, and she might like some help there. And so we can help comfort them through that. Again, it might be death of a loved one, and we can go just sit beside them like Job's friends, just go sit beside them. We don't have to say anything. I don't know what to say. I'd go to someone's house like that.
Just be there for them.
Absolutely. So, that's part of this comforting one another. Again, what does it take to fulfill this? Knowing each other, being willing to devote that time.
Sometimes you don't have to say anything, just knowing they care that you're there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Just being there. The third thing I jotted down was that we show tolerance for one another. It's Ephesians chapter 4 verse 2. How is that bearing one another's burdens when we are? Now again, we're not talking about tolerant of sin. We're not talking about tolerant of false doctrine. We're talking about tolerant of people in the scriptural, godly point of view. How is that bearing one another's burdens?
Don't judge them for what their sin struggle is.
And again, can you imagine how good that makes them feel that, hey, you and I differ about this, and you're not judging me? That's pretty good. And again, it's huge. And there's, you fill in the gaps there. I mean, there's a lot of places that we need to be tolerant with one another. Anyway, like I said, we don't have time to jump into that. But what's that? Yeah, go ahead.
I saw there where it said you shouldn't be upset with someone because their sin is different than your sin.
That's right.
Be tolerant.
That's right. And we shouldn't be upset because their struggle's different from ours.
No.
Even if it's, whatever it is, that we need to be patient and tolerant with it. Then the fourth thing I jotted down was that we need to bear one another in bearing and forgiving one another. So think about the burden that we are carrying when somebody has wronged us and we offer them forgiveness. That again is huge. Huge. All right, we've got like 2 or 3 minutes. So, Paul says, bear one another burden, and this will fulfill the law of Christ. What is this law? What is the law of Christ that he is referring to, that bearing one another's burdens completes? Somebody's. So I think the big piece to that is love. It is obviously something different from the law of Moses, because again, that's in the book of Galatians. That's the stuff when we can't go back. It's not a law. It's not a legal system we're talking about. It is the law of Christ. So there are some different references that kind of tie that together. It is something that is centered in Matthew chapter 7:12 and Matthew chapter 22 verse 36. So Matthew chapter 22 verse 36, hey Jesus, what's the greatest commandment? Oh, that's an easy one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. And you want me to just define? Bearing one another's burdens. So that's the law of Christ. When we bear one another's burdens, we are fulfilling this greatest commandment that he gave us to live by. Matthew 7:12. Anybody got that one on top of their head? Yeah, but that's golden rule. Do unto others. Again, pretty powerful statement. Don't we want somebody to help me through my difficulties? We need to be helping them. It's the law of Christ there. And when he talks about fulfill, what does this word fulfill mean? What does it mean to fulfill that law?
Put it into action.
Put it into action. Practice it. Fill it. Complete it. So, all of this to say, Galatians chapter 6 and verse 2 is pretty huge. That's a huge verse. And there's a lot to it. And so anyway, we will end right there. Paul Muff, would you lead us in a word of prayer, and we'll...
Our Father, we thank you for letting us assemble together in the middle of the week to just talk about your word, to discuss it, apply it to our lives, and Father, help us to do as we've been taught tonight, to share our burdens with others and to help lift the burdens of others in our lives as well. Father, we just thank you for your love and mercy and compassion and grace that you've shown to us. Be with us throughout the week. Be with our ones that are missing because of health or spiritual difficulties in their lives. Be with them. Thank you for so many good things that you do for us, for forgiving us. These are our prayers in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, guys.